Howdy kids, and welcome to another episode of Escaping the Cave Toddzilla X Pod. I am you know what? This week you can call me Mr. Warmth. I'm Todd. Hello there. This is episode number 148, recorded on a Sunday, believe it or not. Yeah. How many of these have I done? Maybe five? 5 Sunday shows over the last 5 years? It very rarely happens. But here I am. It's a surprise Sabbath gift. Perhaps the Spirit of Jesus has come up inside me and immaculately conceived the creative juices, the motivation, the inspiration for this gift, this Sunday gift to you, the Escaping the Cave listener. I am so thrilled. I'm so happy, so proud that Jesus... Yeah, I need to stop this right now. Yeah, I don't do many Sundays, man. Maybe, like I said, maybe 5. Here we are. It's been a weird week. It's been a really weird week. Top of the news story, at least as far as I'm concerned, is Biden deciding that it's a good idea to give Ukraine permission. He gave Zelensky permission to use the American weapons that were sent over there, the long-range missiles, you know. Zelensky wanted them. He wants to win his war, so he wants to use these long-range missiles and fire them into Russia to actually, do some damage. Well, for whatever reason, our fearless geriatric, dementia-ridden leader has hemmed and hawed on this, I think, for a long time. I forget the details on it. Maybe it's a year, maybe I don't know how long. But this week, with 2 months, less than 2 months to go in his term, he decides, go ahead, shoot him. Piss the Russians right off. As you can imagine, the Russians had already said that if those long-range missiles were utilized into Russian territory, that Putin would consider, I think he said he would consider that an act of war, and that he would consider himself at war with the UN. Well, he did it. Hit weapons facilities, I suppose. Well, a couple of days later, up there in Northern Europe, some undersea communications cables were severed, broken. Didn't cause a lot of damage, not a lot of outages as far as the internet goes, but it happened. And a couple days after that, maybe a day, I don't know, I forget, some ICBMs, some intercontinental ballistic missiles, the kind that carry nuclear warheads, were launched right back into Ukraine, hit some spots, some cities. Did not have the nuclear warheads on board, but it was a pretty solid message. Look what we can do. We took our nukes off here, but you sure you want to fuck around? And after that, or maybe before that, at some point, they lowered their nuclear doctrine threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. They do this stuff. They put it out there. Like, hey, you know what? If we're going to use our nukes, these are the guidelines, the standards we're going to use, and now it's much lower than it was. And I'm astounded, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm a child of the Cold War, Gen X, solid Gen X. And it surprises me, shocks me really, how cavalier people seem to be about this situation with Russia. A lot of people are like, whatever, what's a nuclear war here and there? Now they're going to use nukes. Big deal. What? That's a completely foreign concept to me, a completely just a bewildering, befuddling attitude to have toward nuclear weapons for somebody who grew up when I did. During the Cold War, during the Great Russian Empire, I remember nuclear strike drills, all that stuff. But people today, whatever. Really? So, there's that. How you feeling about it? Some people are trying to give Mr. Biden a little cover. saying that our dementia-ridden leader or somebody is doing this in order to give Trump some more bargaining power. Zelensky a stronger leg to stand on when Donald Trump comes into office in January to negotiate the end to the Ukraine-Russian war. Wants to give Zelensky a little more leverage to get a little more out of Putin to end this conflict, because Russia is, its economy, it's dragging. It's got North Korea sending troops. So they're not handling this very well either. He wants to end this war. So maybe, it could be. A lot of people think it's just a bluff, a transparent bluff at that. So, okay, we'll let him bluff. Now you've got permission to use these weapons, so this will put a little bit more pressure on Vladimir to give better terms to Zelensky. And then there's some people on the other side who think that Biden's pissed off that he was kicked out of the election, just wants to rule over the ashes, the nuclear ashes, the radioactive ashes. Let's start a nuclear holocaust because I didn't get elected. Those people are stupid. I don't think that's what happened. But still, being of a certain age, having certain experiences, growing up with a certain attitude, the threat of nuclear war with the Russians kind of tickles the sphincter a little bit, and not in a good way, not in a good way at all. Don't let me be misunderstood. So there's that. Seems like there was something else I was going to talk about as far as politics goes. Yeah, I was going to talk about Trump's appointments, Gates and all that, but it's pretty much what you expect, isn't it? The Gates thing was hilarious. Nobody expected him to ever be confirmed, right? You didn't really expect him to get through the confirmation process or the recess appointments or whatever, did you? Now, that looks like a way to get... Gates has been incredibly loyal, supportive of Trump. This looks like a way for him to get out of Congress and make it look like, well, I just happen to be nominated. Well, then I'll just withdraw because I'm too toxic. Now he doesn't have to worry so much about that report, right? It looks like a parachute to me. A lot of people. He's never going to be the Attorney General of the United States. Bondi, I forget her name. Kim or is it Pam? Whoever, I think it's Pam Bondi, right? Do I have that right? Should have looked this up. Well, she's got some Democrats shitting themselves. She's competent. She knows what she's doing. Now, we'll see what happens with the rest of that. I'm not going to get into the Hesketh thing, any of that other stuff. But isn't it really weird? I will say this. It's just incredible how every time he nominates somebody, boy, CNN, MSNBC, the press has all of these accusations ready to go. And some people are saying, isn't it weird how Donald Trump, no matter what happens, he only nominates people with sex charges or sex accusations? Maybe they have those things ready to go. Maybe it's more of a case of no matter who he nominates, we're going to, accuse of sexual malfeasance. Could it be? Could it be? Could it be? It could be. I don't know. It just seems really weird. I always go back to Scott Ritter. During the run-up to the Iraq War, weapons inspector, I think he was a weapons inspector. Either way, he knew Iraq had zero weapons of mass destruction. He was raising a hissy fit about it. And all of a sudden, sex charge, I think he was accused or convicted or something to do with child porn. Like, that's convenient, isn't it? That's convenient for you, Mr. Cheney and Mr. Bush. Bizarre. So to think that the Democrats wouldn't use that tactic, and Julian Assange, the same thing. Do you really believe all of these? You think it's you don't think that it's just you actually do think it's a really weird coincidence that like there's one of the qualifications for Trump to nominate somebody for a cabinet position is that he has a sex charge, that he's mistreated women somehow, or men. Doesn't seem weird to you? Seems weird to me. And they're always right there. Within a couple of days, boom! Where were these accusations before? Call me cynical. Neil deGrasse Tyson stepped in it. Check this out.
Scientific American, the magazine. I remember when it was around when I was
grew up with it, yeah.
Grew up with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, their editor had to quit. You saw this.
Yeah, I heard about it because she expressed some opinions, right.
It sure didn't sound scientific. It didn't sound like the person I would want to be running Scientific American.
Okay.
It was a rant on Twitter. Okay, I could read it to you. It's really ugly. You know, I apologize to younger voters that my Gen X is so full of fucking fascists. Okay, I'm not.
Okay, I'm not a gasket right there.
I'm not for.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not for canceling anybody on either side.
Yeah.
So But here's what I think is the scandal.
What?
This is in Scientific American.
Yeah.
Less than a year ago. Inequity between male and female athletes is the result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports. That's nuts. And it sure ain't scientific, and it's in Scientific American. And that's why the Democrats lost the election. It's true.
Bill, every 20 minutes on your platform, you come up with another reason why the Democrats lost. No. You already have the answer. They lost the election. So anything you say is why they did it.
First of all, you don't watch this show, so you don't know that. I know you don't, and it's okay. But you talk as if you do, and you fucking don't. And that's okay. Just don't bullshit me. That's the one thing people can't ever do on this show is bullshit me. And that's fine. But I don't say that. I have very good reasons. But engage with the idea here. What I'm asking is, Scientific American is saying, basically, that the reason why an WNBA team can't beat the Lakers is because of societal bias.
What you're saying is not Scientific American says that. An editor for Scientific American says that, who no longer has the job. So don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because somebody...
Okay, this is called Scientific American, and they're printing something
because someone enters the cesspool that is social media and then participates in that exchange. So
why can't you
let's talk about science.
Why can't you just say this is not scientific and Scientific American should do better?
Well, does she still have her job?
No, not because of this. I said the scandal is not her tweet.
Because that was like a year ago, was it? Which one was a year ago?
I think a year ago women still couldn't beat men in basketball or any other sport. And it wasn't because of society. You don't see a problem
By the way,
here?
long-distance swimming, women might actually have the advantage. You can look into that. Yeah.
Maybe long-distance swimming, yes. Okay.
Yeah. I've looked into it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to file you under part of the problem.
And he is part of the problem. This goes back to what we were talking about with Kamala Harris during the campaign. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, in other words, engage with the idea, which he absolutely refuses to do, then you befuddle him with bullshit. You go off on these bad faith tangents, these bad faith arguments, to obscure the entire point. He says that Scientific American has 170 years of scientific history. It doesn't matter. In fact, if it has been scientific for 170 years, it makes the ideological capture of the publication appear worse in comparison because people might actually remember what the magazine or whatever it is used to be, what the publication used to be when it was about science. And they may still expect it to be that. What they did a year ago was pull a Jaguar-style rebrand. They stepped in it. I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of time, a lot of effort to sort of act as the PR firm for Scientific American, engaging in spin, excusing them for this faux pas. But none of that matters. None of that matters, and I'm going to tell you why. It's the outside impression of the magazine itself, which reflects on the experts, the scientists itself. The Democratic Party owns AOC, owns Rashida Tlaib, owns Bernie Sanders. The scientific community owns this. It reflects on the establishment, the institution of science as a whole. It looks like the experts, the scientists, including Neil deGrasse Tyson, have been ideologically captured. The ideology is leading the science. And that's probably why the woke flake in question was actually fired. They realized and they understood at some point that she damaged the now pseudoscience publications' credibility and their brand on a wider scale by going off and stepping into the ideological woke swamp. What's great about this clip and this exchange, really, is that Bill Maher gave Tyson a wonderful opportunity, a generous opportunity to refute this stuff, this flat earth level conspiracy theory that the only reason women don't beat men in athletic competition is because of the societal structure of bias. Oh my God, they're oppressed. Has nothing to do with physical and biological differences. It's society. He could have stood up for the actual science. He had a perfect opportunity right there to say, you know what, that's just stupid. She should have been fired. She damaged the credibility. She damaged the scientific community's credibility with vast swaths of people. Maher gave him a beautiful opportunity to do that, to actually stand up for objective science, science that isn't tainted by the ideological religion. He couldn't do it. He refused to do it. He went into pompous mode. Sort of, I'm the smart guy, I'm going to mock you kind of mode. The elitist mode that so many people are sick and fucking tired of. He failed. Rather than stand up for the actual science and common sense, he cowered like a blind serf, prostrate before his woke king. And worse, he hid from the mob, the online virtual mob, the cesspool mob that he mentioned in his little retort there. He hid from them to protect himself rather than defending that quote-unquote truth, scientific truth, objective scientific reality. Now think about this for a second. It's not just about this exchange. It's not just about gender or women in sports or the equality of men and women in sports. It has something to do with that, but that pales in comparison. If you believe in science, if you believe in climate change, and you're one of the utopians who still think that we can do something about it, this, as I said, reflects on people who are desperately trying to get people to come around. We live in a democracy. If people do not trust the institutions, do not trust the people talking about climate change, trying to show people the way, and this is just presuming it's true. If people don't trust that, it gives others an opportunity to exploit that skepticism, that cynicism, that mis- or distrust. And all he did during that exchange was make that worse. Telling people not to believe their own eyes. That's Orwellian. Believe what the party tells you. Don't believe your own eyes. Don't believe your own common sense. Don't believe your own experience. Believe what Scientific American and their woke extremist editor and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's cowering before the mob, kneeling before the woke king, tells you. That's what you're supposed to do. And he does all of this with that mocking, elitist tone. Fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Fuck Scientific American. Defend them all you want. They have damaged. If you believe in it, and a lot of you do, I know you do, I don't disbelieve it myself, but he has damaged whatever quest for public climate change consensus a lot of people are looking for because we vote, because this is a democracy, because in order to do the things these people want to do or think they must do to save the planet and save humanity from some, climate catastrophe, they've damaged that. They've poured kerosene on the cynicism fire. They have pushed the institutions just a little bit further into hospice. Yay! He missed a really huge opportunity. He could have made news on Friday night. He did make news on Friday night. Anyway, this is all over the place. But he could have made news in a good way. He could have pushed things back towards sanity, back towards regaining, I guess, the trust of the people that the climate change people need to move things forward. And he failed. He utterly failed. He cowered. He tightened the chains. Took a couple of links out of the chain being held by his woke captors. People saw it. People understand that. People can see that. Come on. A way to go. I've decided to try something a little different with this podcast to keep my voice strong. You notice it sounds good, right? I'm going going to try to dig up some songs that people of my generation, and I think it's mostly Gen X people that are listening to this show these days. I'm going to try to dig up some stuff that maybe you haven't heard in a long time, put it between segments. And maybe that way, you almost got Corey Hart right there. Oof. You're welcome. Anyway, maybe I can save the voice a little bit and give this more of a spontaneous feel, I think. Anyway, I've decided to call an audible. I was going to talk more about the election and all that stuff. The autopsy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with the theme here. I was talking about a minute ago because I think this is really important. It's incredibly important that people get a handle on why these institutions are failing. I mean, if you do believe in climate change, this is a huge deal to you. Why aren't people listening to the supposed experts? And again, we live in a democracy. You need these people to buy what you're selling if you're going to have them vote for people who are actually going to do something about it. Right? And if you don't want to do that, if you don't think that's important, that means that you want to force this down people's throats. That makes you a totalitarian, an authoritarian. That makes you a tyrant. And you know what you can do. So, I think people have to understand this a little bit better. And this ties into what has been for 5 years, on and off, the main theme of this show. I had a nice little exchange with a friend of mine this week. A couple of exchanges with him this week. He fancies himself a highly rational scientific thinker who wants to leave things to the experts. We have to believe the experts, like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I haven't ever asked him this. We've never really sat down and had a long, in-depth discussion about this stuff, but he seems to be of the mind that climate change is the existential threat of our time, that if we don't get this under control now, we're abdicating our responsibility to our planet, to our race, our species, and, I don't know, the lizards. Fair enough. He's coming from a good place. He is. I can tell that. I know that. I've known this guy longer than just about anybody else I know in my life outside of my family. I've known him for decades. He's a good guy. He's a conscientious guy. He wants to do the right thing, and I love him for it. But he's a utopian thinker in a certain way. I think he comes from a place, again, I'm just speculating here. I think he comes from a place where he has to believe that we can still do something about climate change. I've said on this show before, a number of times before, that I don't feel that way anymore. When it comes to climate change, now this is all on the presumption that it's true, that everything we've heard about it from the scientists, aside from Neil deGrasse Tyson, that everything we've heard from the scientists is on the level and true. We're not going to do anything about it. If these effects are coming, they're coming. You can convince 80% of the people in the United States, you can convince them today that all this stuff's true. They could vote the way you want them to vote, or, I don't know, the other side could come around, they could buy it and start trying to make all of these changes. You could do that. And it still would not make one iota's worth of difference because the Earth's climate is a holistic system. It's interconnected with everyone else on the planet until you get China and Russia and India and the other powers, the other filthy industrialized powers who are polluting the environment to come around to lower their carbon emissions, whatever it is that's going to stop or retard climate change. They'll reverse the effects, even if that's possible. I don't think it is. But even if you can't do anything, you can't force China to do anything. So yeah, knock yourself out. Make us change our light bulbs. Make us recycle absolutely everything. It's still not going to make a difference. Not enough of a difference. And there's plenty of evidence out there right now that says we're probably decades past that point. Now, they won't say that. They can't say that because if you tell somebody it's too late already, they're not going to do anything, right? So in my mind, I've said this before, I will say it again. At this point, at least I will die on this hill. The challenge moving forward, the way to better spend our resources and our energy, our rhetorical and financial energy, is adaptation. The story of human existence, of evolution, of everything, is adapt or die. Environments change. People adapt. Species adapt. That's how evolution works. Society is no different. If the environment is going to change, if the sea levels are really going to rise and these temperatures are going to keep going up, yada, 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 then we have to adapt or we will die collectively. A lot of us will. It's as simple as that. So, do you want to sit here and spend your days beating your head on a cinder block, trying to convince people of something, people that don't trust you, largely your own fault? Or do you want to start working toward sort of a triage situation, a climatological triage situation where we can maybe, mitigate some of the effects? Save as many people. Whatever. That's my viewpoint on this. Now, for those of you who are still stuck in this utopian vision that we can change, we can convince people, we can make all of these changes, and we can roll back the effects of climate change, and we can put our planet back on, it's equilibrium. You have a problem. We just mentioned it in the last segment. Trust in institutions. Informational anarchy. Social media. Captured institutions. Ideologically captured institutions. Where the doctrine, where all of the science is affected and presented. All of the results, all of the findings have to agree with the doctrine, with the scripture. This is like the church having a science department. It has to agree with creationism. Right? And that's what we saw. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the Scientific American stuff. It's really not that big a deal in the granular sense. Who gives a shit what one woman thinks and what one woman says in one opinion piece on one publication? It's true. The problem is that it affects everything else downstream. How people perceive and trust these institutions. You need those people. You need them to trust you. If your utopian solution, even if it's possible, if it's even possible, which I don't think it is, but if it is, you need those people to cooperate with you. You need those people to believe you or them. And when you have some woman claiming that men and women are completely indistinguishable in athletics, it's the society. It's the social structure that keeps them from competing on an equal footing. And Maher made a great analogy. What are you saying, that some WNBA team is going to go beat the Lakers? Really? Really? You sure? Let's try it. I'd like to see him try. I would love to see that. I would love to see a WNBA team hop on the court. What's the stadium out there? I keep wanting to say the Forum. That's the old one. Whatever that stadium is out there. I don't watch basketball. I don't like basketball. Can go. I'd like to see them hop on the court They go to Little Caesars Arena. Here we go. Let's get a WNBA team to go to Little Caesars Arena and play the woefully pathetic Detroit Pistons and see what happens. The Pistons have to actually play, though. They can't hold back. Okay, from hurting the girls. They have to do it. Why do we have different leagues? These are for-profit leagues, right? If you win, you make more money, right? So why aren't they bringing these talented women, these athletically, gifted women, why aren't they bringing them into the NBA? If there's no difference. If they're just as talented as the men, why aren't we seeing any of these women in the NBA? My computer's being stupid here. Sorry, there we go. Where are they? Meritocracy, professional athletics is one of the few places where merit actually matters. So if women were actually on the same physical level as men, you would see women in the NBA, in Major League Baseball, in professional football, because they would make the team money. And my God, do you think that wouldn't be a PR coup for some league? This day and age, they're still not there. Because they want to win, because they make more money when they do. So yeah, for her to come out and say that, this nonsense, reflects not only on Scientific American, it reflects on the entire institution of science, of American science. It makes it look like everybody has been captured. And it makes people who are skeptical just have a little bit of common sense, that understand biology to at least some degree, dismiss everything else they've said or will say. You've given people who already are inclined to disagree with you all the reason they need to dismiss everything you've ever said or will say again. I have an episode I did in August of last year, I think, talking about this, where if you don't like somebody, you're looking for any reason to discount, to dismiss anything they say. How much damage, thinking with that kind of spotlight on that little sliver of psychology, how many people, what kind of permission did she give people who are already looking for a reason to dismiss the science? How much damage did she do with that? And how much damage did Neil deGrasse Tyson do on Friday by refusing, talking around it, going into Kamala mode, tossing a word salad, tossing Kamala's word salad on national television, trying to defend it, refusing, cowardly refusal to just speak sense. He's afraid. I didn't realize until late, I knew it Friday, but I didn't realize that he had been Me Too'd back in the 20-teens. And he apparently went off and had to apologize and go through the shame, had to do Cersei's walk of shame. Maybe that changed him. Maybe he doesn't want to endure that again. But if that's the case, then he should not be a spokesman for science. Entertainer, whatever, that's fine. This is no Carl Sagan here anyway. This is no Stephen Hawking. He went on to Overtime after the show. I haven't seen the full clip yet. I just got a little bit of it. But he started to, I guess, sort of either dismiss or mock Elon Musk's proposal to go to Mars, his goal to go to the red planet. Well, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it'll blah, blah. That stuff. I've heard him say that he thinks it's a terrible idea to even try. Well, we have a planet right here. Why don't we fix it? Carl Sagan disagreed with that vehemently. Stephen Hawking, who has 100 times the brain that Tyson does, or had 100 times the brain anyway before he died, said pretty much the same thing Musk has said. This is Stephen Hawking saying that we're going to get to the point with this planet, on this planet, that we may get to the point where we have to, if we want to survive as a species, we're going to have to colonize another planet. And the only one we have, the only one we can possibly even think about getting to at this point is Mars. Probably a little degree of Musk derangement syndrome involved in that thinking on Friday, whatever. But that's not scientific. It reflects poorly on the entire institution. Now, like a lot of people, my friend thinks the same way I used to think. I'm not criticizing him here. I had the same attitude about this a long time ago, not even really that long ago. Even when I started this podcast, I had the concept, the vision in my mind that if I just came and told people the truth, that the truth would set them free, that everybody was interested in the truth. That if you just showed them the facts, laid it out for them, that you'd liberate them, that the world would be a better place because the truth would lead. That's why this podcast is named Escaping the Cave. I thought that if I started doing sort of a dissertation type thing, explaining what I've learned about propaganda, that I could inoculate people to it. Oops. It's not how it works. It took me a while to realize that. I've talked about this a number of times. I will again. But it started to hit me, I think, in 2019. Facts are powerless against the story. Talked about that a couple of episodes back. Harari's book on information. But it's true. It's the story that matters. And any fact, any objective truth that you can find, no matter how ironclad and solid it is, will be powerless against the story. The way you reach people is the story. Propagandists have understood this for a long time, man. Marketing people understand this. Every commercial you watch on television is a story. It's targeting your identity. We're trying to change it. We're trying to give you something to aspire to with their product, of course. Narrative. We hear that word all the time. I've said before, I despise it. I understand why we're hearing it. It's just, I'm sick of hearing it. Because people use it trying to sound smart, right? It's a story. A narrative is a story. Religion is a story. Social media-induced worldviews. Those silos, those informational silos are informational silos that reinforce a story. Ideologies are stories. Utopian visions are stories. People that need hope are telling themselves a hopeful story about how this could possibly go. It's all about the story, man. It really is. The stories we tell ourselves, the internal narrative that we all have, it goes on in everybody's mind. It's probably going on in yours right now. When you're sitting here hearing that voice in your head, you think you're thinking, but you're really storytelling. It's ingrained at the very, very base, the base of who we are. We've always been storytellers, cohesive narratives that bind us into tribes, into nations, whatever. That's what matters. Facts. If facts really mattered, we wouldn't have religion. We wouldn't have astrology. We wouldn't have political parties. We'd all be, chasing the same thing. It's not how it works. And to continue to believe that, I understand. I don't want to be too critical here. Because I think it's a noble thing to try to be as rational as you possibly can. It is a noble endeavor. But unless you're highly trained and you understand things like peer reviews and I'm forgetting the word for it, but when you have when you come to a conclusion, you have an experiment, and you have somebody else check your work. The scientific method, unless you're highly trained in that and obsessively aware of your own bias, your own identity, your own attachment to your ideas, you're going to fail. So very, very few people are trained that way. And the stuff that we're talking about here, with politics, with ideologies, religion, all that, it's all subjective. There's no real tangible truth to it. When you talk about social justice, again, I've said this before, I know. But when you're talking about justice, you're talking about an abstract thing that doesn't exist anywhere but the human mind. So you can define it any way you want to. And people do. Thus, conflict. There's no truth to it. It's subjective. Depending on where you are and the viewpoint you've chosen, you're going to define it one way as opposed to another way by somebody else. There's no collective justice. That's why DEI fails. You're trying to make things just for 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 different groups of people, while on the other hand, that comes off as injustice to other people. Duh. I had a Darwin thing I did a few years ago. Highlighted that really well. I don't know where it's at right now. I'm not going to bother with it. And I'm not going to try to encapsulate it because it won't do it any justice. But justice, forced justice, a justice program that's not based on merit, that's not objectively applied across the board like diversity, equity, and inclusion, that kind of justice is injustice to someone else. It has to be. It is favoritism. Maybe it comes from a good place. Probably does. Of course it does. These people don't think they're doing anything wrong. They love the smell of their own flatulence as much as anybody does, so they think they're doing something wonderful and righteous. They have found Joan Didion's moral imperative. But other people see it differently. They feel it differently. They have a different experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's because justice is not tangible. It's not real. It's a subjective concoction that depends on a story. A story told to 1, 2, 3 different groups that's diametrically opposed to the story being told by the other ones. The story is what matters. And if you think objective truth will set you free, will set the world free, look around. Is it working? We have more knowledge, more scientific knowledge. We're exchanging more information via social media and other avenues than we ever could possibly conceive of for thousands, hundreds, and tens of thousands of years. Are we getting better? Are we getting closer to it? Are we being set free by all this exchange of information? Is the truth bubbling to the top? No. People are just, they're sort of cleaving themselves off into their tribes that are held together, bound together by cohesive narratives, stories. Have fun with that. Have fun with that objective truth thing. I feel for you. I'm sympathetic. I was there. I get it. Save yourself the trouble, because you're going to come to this conclusion eventually, or you're going to end up so disillusioned and crushed that you may just drop out altogether. Which, you know what? Can I blame you? Yeah, marketing, propaganda, narratives, religion, ideologies, they're synonyms. They're synonyms for the same thing, a story, a cohesive story, a cohesive narrative. Propaganda is a political story spun one way or another. Marketing, a story told about a product. Religion, the ultimate story, the greatest story ever told, the most cohesive story ever told. Various versions of it, it's all the same thing. It's a religion. It puts you at the center of the universe. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a schematic, a path, a way to live your life, and a place to go to see your lost loved ones when you die. We were bound to create it. And if we were to scrape the earth, if climate change were to scrape the earth clean, leave about 50 people alive to repopulate whatever's left, they'd come up with religion too. Even if they've never heard of Islam or Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism, they'd come up with their own. Every society, every culture has done it because human beings at their core are primarily storytellers, not truth seekers. Some people are truth seekers. As a species, as a whole, no. We are not. We need to look at that. Look within yourself sometime when your brain and that internal narrative, that little voice that just keeps going like this inside of your head. Everybody does it. They've got that voice going, self-talk, whatever you want to call it. Pay attention to it. I had my own, man, and mine were black. I mean, really dark. Other times, when depending on what I was doing, where I was at, they were better, more optimistic. I actually had a name for mine. It was horror stories. I can't remember. I should talk more about this at some point in time. But once you start to pay attention to that, then you see it. So we are. We are storytellers. But yeah, if you still think that objective truth is the ultimate goal, the ultimate escape vehicle, no. I sympathize. Again, I keep saying it. I sympathize. Prepare yourself. And I shouldn't criticize too much. I mean, especially coming from the point of view of being a guy on this podcast. I've mentioned that I've been talking about this for 4 years. I have never really delved into it. I've talked about it like I am right now. But I've never really gotten to the point where I've dived into it on this show as much as I have in my books. There are books out there that talk about this, and my God, they all sound pretty much the same. Various authors, different eras. Yeah. Same theme, and I'll tell you what, a lot of that stuff, almost all of it, really, echoes what I was talking about with the propaganda book by John Kalul back in 2019. The story. Appealing to emotion. Pithy little slogans, all that stuff. I told my friend that this is the Rosetta Stone. If you know what the Rosetta Stone is, this is it as far as propaganda goes. Disinformation, misinformation, Don Quixote, all of it. This is the Rosetta Stone, storytelling. Storytellers, not truth seekers. The truth will not work. Not by itself. People don't want it. And if people don't want it in a free society, you can't force it on them because somebody else out there will give them what they want. You have to convince them. You have to bring them along. And if you don't bring them along, you're sunk. Ask Kamala Harris about that. Ask Hillary Clinton about it. All you have to do is look around, man. We are not built that way. The shared tribal stories are what matter. I got to say, nothing I can think of, really, is more self-evident than that. It's funny, I've got another example from Scientific American. I've noticed this for a long time. I have a lot of like NASA. I'm following a lot of like NASA space type people, organizations on X, and Scientific American pops up a lot. And my God, I've been noticing how terrible this publication is for a really long time. And we were having this conversation about Bill Maher and Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I found another one on X from Scientific American saying this is the another opinion piece, but it reflects on the publication and on the entire scientific community itself. The headline, okay, denial of evolution is a form of, you ready for it, white supremacy. Denial of evolution is a form of white supremacy. This is from, I think it was from 2021. Now, this is post-COVID. And the subheadline reads, as museums reopen, let's introduce ourselves and our children to the original black ancestors of all human beings. Oh, my God. This is with the BLM movement. Shortly after George Floyd, we were at peak black back then. Remember? BLM hadn't been outed as a completely, literally a Marxist organization as of yet. Founded by Marxists, they hadn't been. So here we were. We had to talk about race, and we had to lift the black people, the black race up. This was at the height of it. How many people who were already sick of the BLM stuff, the George Floyd stuff, the riots, all of it, having this racial enema shoved up their posterior? How many people saw that headline, flipped them the finger, and moved a little bit further away from the scientific community? If you're going to tell me that that was not ideologically chosen to be published at that particular time, I'm going to call you an idiot. It was appealing to the trend, the social trend. Denial of evolution is a form of white supremacy. Yes. So if you go to church and you believe in creation, I know some evangelicals, very, very sweet, great people. They're not racists. They deny the shit out of evolution, though. So are they engaging in a form of white supremacy? Yeah? Fuck you. No, they're not. But to see that, it triggers this revulsion in some people. From Scientific American. How do you scientifically prove that? You don't. You can't. But here it is. Now, does science actually exist? Of course it does. Does objective truth actually exist? Sure. One great example of it is the space program, NASA, something I'm really into. The moon launches, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo back in the 60s, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, all of it. I just love those. I'm finishing a book on Yuri Gagarin, first man in space, Soviet cosmonaut. It's excellent. So there's a really good example of objective science, physical science, all right? Now, in the beginning, NASA absolutely told themselves these subjective possible stories, right? That's where storytelling comes in. It's imagination, invention, problem solving. That's storytelling. It's conceived, telling yourself a quick story, a creative, educated story about how something might possibly work, right? They didn't just get the vision of the LEM capsule from God or from the universe. Although some people probably think they did. No. It's imagination, it's creativity, and that's storytelling to some extent. Came from an educated process of envisioning what could possibly be. Utopians, they're always in that loop, man. Always in that loop. Whoa, believe in the possibility of what could be. But then when it comes to, bringing it about, always fails. They're stuck in the storytelling loop. They never really can base and separate the story from the reality. That doesn't happen in rocket science. Now, the storytelling stuff, It's a fundamental process. As I've said, I'll say it again, it's embedded as an operating system. It's a primary part of who we are. Every child recognizes storytelling. It's one of the first things we do as children. It's buried that deep into the DNA. But with rocket science and the utopians, once envisioned, what comes next is the hard part. It's manifesting that clever, abstract story into a cold, hard, unforgiving reality. Taking the concept, the story-induced concept, and bringing it to life. Now, the difference between these subjective interpersonal truths that I talked about with Harari a couple episodes back, belief, that's belief. Intersubjective truths. Difference between that and quote-unquote fact is preserved for everybody to see. If you go back to the 1960s and you watch the videos, watch the old NASA footage. Today, there are videos of SpaceX rockets crash into the ground. What about the sounds of Grissom, Chafee, and White? They had them on comm when that capsule burned up. Something happened. Somebody fucked up. The cold, hard reality. The difference between concept and manifesting that in the real world. That's what happens with science, actual science, physical science. There is no ambiguity. Failed tests, immediate accountability for failed science. Failed engineering. Immediate results showing whether the scientists, the engineers were right or wrong, and whether or not people did their jobs correctly. Now, I hate to tell you, hate to break it to you, but none of that applies to climate change. None of it. Regardless of the most self-righteous protests and proclamations, regardless of what Greta says, how dare you? No one is clearly and irrefutably dying on impact right now. Blowing up on the pad as far as climate change goes. All we have are endless claims of doom coming on the heels of decades and decades and decades of other failed claims and suspiciously misguided predictions of doom. Fair or not, doesn't matter. Climate doomsayers carry the ghosts of all the climate soothsayers and prophets who said we will be underwater and out of oil by the year 2000. Remember them? They just ignore it. When it doesn't have to, they're like the people, the ones that stand, the religious nuts that stand on the street corner. The end is nigh. And the world doesn't end. Oh, yeah. It's next week. It's the same thing. Now, maybe you're just wrong. That's what people say. What about those experts back in the year 2000? Remember that? Y2K? A lot of experts were saying the world's going to end. There's going to be planes falling out of the sky. The power grid's going to fail. It's going to be anarchy. My girlfriend at the time was so freaked out by those people that on December 31st, 1999, she was in bed. I had this image in my head. She was in bed. The covers pulled up around her head watching CNN, waiting for the world to end. Now, you're a little off. Okay. I went out. I'm like, you know what? This is the millennium, cause I'm going to go to the bar. You can stay home if you want to. I'd like you to come, but I'm not doing that. Bye. We broke up a couple of months later. Right? Yeah, people were terrified of Y2K. You look back on it now, it seems kind of silly. But go back, even Office Space. Go back and watch Office Space. I mean, it gives you a little hint at the hysteria that was going. Do you remember it? It's crazy. Yeah, these climate folks, they carry those ghosts around with them in their back pockets. They also carry the ghost of Joe Biden. Not a ghost yet. Saying that if you got the jab, if you got the COVID vaccine, you wouldn't get COVID. It's on tape. It's all over the place. If you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. That was bullshit. It was a therapeutic injection, not really a vaccine. Sure, it worked. It helped people with who were old or had underlying conditions, diabetes, obesity, all that. Helped those people not die. It did help those people, but it did not in any way, shape, or fashion prevent the spread of COVID. Prevented deaths, didn't prevent transmission. So you're carrying that ghost around with you as well. Why don't people believe the experts? As things sit right now, not enough people believe climatology's town criers to make a difference. They don't. The story has failed. They cannot get enough people to change their habits or even vote accordingly. Absent that, because they've lost credibility, right or wrong, for whatever reason, even if they're right, the facts are powerless against the opposing story. I'm telling you, if you're still stuck in the truth will set you free thing, that if you tell people the truth, you're going to win eventually. Prepare yourself to be disappointed. People don't function like Saturn rockets. They never have. They're far messier. And honestly, the psychology of this, the storytelling psychology, hate to break it to you, but it's far more important than the science. Do all the science you want. If you don't bring the people along, game over. No. All right, voice is starting to get a little raspy. See how these lozenges work. They're called a throat coat. There's a picture of them if you're watching. And heard somebody talking about these. I think it was, I don't remember where it was. But as you get older, your voice dries out a little bit, a lot easier. And so I figured I'd try them. And they seemed to work the first time I used them. And maybe I should stop drinking this stuff. Celsius is a wonderful thing, by the way. No, I'm not getting paid for this. It's just stuff that I like. Celsius rules. Let's cut my coffee intake down. Anyway, I'm going to drive this point home one more time. I'm going to say this again. I said it earlier. You can suppose that you convince 80% of the people, 80% of the country to go along with, I don't know, some climate-based reforms, right? You've convinced people climate change is real and that we still have time to do something about it, and they're willing to cooperate. Great. Again, what about China, India, Russia, all of it? What's going to happen? You may as well masturbate to the shrill sounds of Kamala's cackle, because you're going to accomplish just about as much. Get everybody in the country to play along. If Russia, China, all the rest of them don't, we are an interconnected system. What have you done? What have you accomplished? Well, at least we tried. Yeah, great. Pat on the back. But really, is that what you're after? Pats on the back to say we tried to stop it? No. Human history, like the story of every surviving species on the planet throughout history, it's a story of adaptation. Adapt or die. If climate change is real, the propaganda campaign failed long, long ago. The results are coming. Like every other critter whose environment has suddenly changed, and it's happened before, which, by the way, is another roadblock for climate propaganda. Climate's changed a number of times already. Die-offs, all that stuff. How do you prove? Again, I probably shouldn't ask that because I'm going to get answers that I'm not really interested in. Maybe it is us, whatever. The idea remains the same. Even if we are causing this, if the climate changes, what's required is adaptation. Mitigating the effects of it. We'll either adapt or die. That's where the focus should be. And again, if you're one of those people that has to believe that we can still reverse course, all the sensible data that I've seen, the sensible data seems to suggest otherwise. It's coming. We've missed all the mile markers. Those engaged in self-manufacturing that kind of irrational yet hopeful belief are engaged in telling themselves a story too. Without the world, without the rest of the industrialized world, telling the same story, it won't matter one bit. And one other thing on that, belief, belief, faith, belief and faith, faith. Belief is where truth and reality sometimes go to die. If you need to believe something so badly, you're disengaging the rational mind. The only hope, the only faint hope you have to remain tethered to the rational part of your brain. Belief often kills truth. Again, how many examples of that do you need? I'll give you one example. What about those Islamic crusaders who were butchering all those people on October 7th last year? And they believed passionately believed. They still believe, right? Belief didn't make them right. It didn't conjure up Allah or Muhammad. Didn't make him real. Didn't make him right about anything. They believed it. Sure, were they right about it? All their belief did in their minds was make their victims disposable. Disposable, blasphemous swine who could be killed at will, exterminated. Because of who they were. It just made them barbarians. I'll say it again. It's the people. It's always been the people. A couple other notes that I had. Elon Musk, he's talking about hinting strongly at buying MSNBC, which is up on the chopping block now. Oof. Oh, did you see that? Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski? They went down to Mar-a-Lago. They kissed the ring. Pissed off their viewers to no end. Comcast looking to spin off the company, spin off a bunch of those cable channels into another company so they can sell it, get rid of it, because it's the future for those networks not looking good. Elon Musk heard about that and started hinting that he may buy it. Can you imagine XTV? I'd never watch Fox or CNN again. Joe Rogan said he wanted Maddows. Times a lot. Interesting times to be alive, man. No. Anyway, I might have more on that in the next episode. That's a good story. Something else to look out for at some point. Going to start talking about the woke right. Now, somebody, I think it was James Lindsay over on X, has been warning about the radicalization, the further radicalization of the right, the far right. He's termed it the woke right. I don't like that term too much. There's only one woke, and it's clear over to the left there. But this is going to become an issue at some point. We got a little hint of that, I think, with Nancy Mace and her little spat with AOC and the transgender congressperson last week. I have a podcast back there from 2019. It's number 46 in the list. It's from September 18th of 2019, and it's called Newton's Third Law of Totalitarian Messiahs. I should rename it Newton's Third Law of Extremism. For every swing this way, there's an equal and opposite swing this way. It keeps going back and forth, getting further out there every time. Now, you can go back as far as you want with this, right? But just let's go back to, 2008 or so. Had Obama, the Tea Party, which led to Trump, in response to Obama. And then you had the resistance, the woke resistance in response to Trump. Now, whatever we have here, right, hasn't even developed yet. But you're seeing little indications of it here and there, where this is going to go. People calling for the arrests of various people. I'm going to tell you this right now. You've never heard me say on this show that I support Donald Trump, that I like Donald Trump, that I am a Trumpenstein monster. Never have. My support of him, of the programs, is transactional because I think I've said this on the show before, my main issue, left-wing extremism. So if that's the case, the side that you tacitly support is Trump. And I want to see what happens with the immigration problem. I want to see what happens with DEI programs, specifically with the FCC. I want to see how that goes. But there's going to come a point in time, I'm almost sure of it. It has to, right? Where the radicalization in response to wokeism, it's going to cross a certain threshold. And then they're going to become a problem too. So I'm warning you folks, you Trump supporters, the ones who actually support Trump, who think he's, the savior and all that. At some point in time, I guarantee it, I don't know when it's going to be, but for me personally, it's going to cross a line where I'm going to have to step out of there. Again, I'm going to be out on, political orphan island. I've said this before. There's going to come a point in time where the enemy of my enemy, who is my friend now, may not be so friendly later. But there are indications that it's already happening. We'll talk more about that at some point. Good stuff. Huh? Am I a vessel for hope? Do you find my podcast uplifting? Am I good for your blood pressure? Have I made you optimistic about the future? Are you recycling? Do you have solar panels? Have you bought an EV yet? Escaping the Gate podcast, that's what this is. Toddzilla X-Pod 2 might be again. Thinking about changing that. I'll let you know more about that at some point. Toddzilla X over at Substack. Got the Toddzilla X thing over at the YouTube. Videos, that's what I was going to mention. Videos going up to the Substack feed on a regular basis. May take me a day or two to get them up there. Also, videos over on X. Toddzilla X-Pod over there. Check me out. Follow me if you like. Say hi. If I don't talk to you by Thursday, happy Thanksgiving. Till next time, so long.